The National Environmental Plastic Waste Control Regulation 2026 is not designed to shut down industries or undermine investments or impose abrupt burdens on manufacturers. Rather, they are a national environmental and circular economic kind of uh, tool that is supposed to endanger that we reduce how we use plastics and so to be able to prevent the pollution that actually happens as a result of these plastics, strengthen producer accountability, stimulate recycling markets, then provide waste recovery systems, and then promote innovation in packaging and design. And then it's supposed to actually create economic opportunities within the country of recycling. Now, the regulation was made pursuant to our powers, the powers conferred by the NESREA Act, because we have been given powers to be able to make regulations, which when we do, it's like a subsidiary kind of legislation. So powers conferred from the National Assembly that we can actually make those regulations. And so NESREA looked at this problem of pollution, and every one of you agrees that we have a problem with the way we use plastics. I'm going to address some of the issues that were brought in because there are issues canvassed to say that it's a downstream problem. Downstream meaning that, oh, it's a waste disposal problem. No, it's not. Well, this problem is actually a complicated problem. It starts from the production. It starts, so if you're looking for a solution, it has to be a solution that goes all the way, all through the value chain. Production, consumption, and even disposal as well. And so that is what we're going to address here. So let's start dealing with some of the issues that have been thrown up recently as a result of engagement with man. One of the claims, and one of the strongest claims, is this, that the regulation imposes a blanket 80 microns ban on all single-use plastics. This interpretation is not correct. 80 microns provision in Regulation 26 relates specifically to certain plastic bags made up of plastic films. Okay, it's not. It does not amount to a blanket prohibition of plastic packaging, nor does it ban all single-use plastic products across the food, beverage, pharmaceutical, and agricultural, or logistic or manufacturing sectors. So the regulation makes a clear distinction between plastic bags, carrier bags, and other plastic packaging bags. It then goes on to allow that bags within the 30 and to 50 microns should be actually allowed into production, okay? But then at a different kind of, it has another provision that is actually guiding that. So the tendency to think is that, oh, that's where I said 80 microns, and then everything, packaging has to be 80 microns. No, it doesn't involve all, right? There is room for 30 to 50 microns, but then it has its own separate provisions guiding it with its own pathways of actually regulating that as well. So all that is because we are supposed to be transitioning, and NESREA agrees that it is not, we cannot impose an 80 ban, an 80 microns provision, okay? So it has to be that there's 80, but then for plastic films, I've said that, those kind of problematic plastics. But then when you go down, there are provisions for the 30 and 50 and it has its own provisions of how it will be guided and how it will be actually resolved. It's all there in this particular regulation. There is also a concern that this regulation will cause immediate disruption of manufacturing operations. Now, this regulation was contemplated in a phased kind of approach in implementation. And because of that, the regulation is even supposed to kick in by 1st January 2028 to give manufacturers enough time for us to be able to consult and then for them to be able to adjust their processes accordingly. Because we know that this kind of regulation, we are hoping to actually reduce plastic. So yes, things will change. Manufacturers will have to change the way they actually do things. But then there is enough time for us to be able to do that. So by 2028 is when it will even kick in for the 25% minimum content that we expect recycled PET to be infused into the virgin PET. So which means that we don't expect from 2028 that people make uh, materials out of 100% virgin PET. At least there would be now 25% rPET. And then it goes on to say by 2030, you would have up to 50% of rPET. Now, all that is so that we don't disrupt business. We understand that there are businesses in the line, and so all that will be done in consultation. The implementation will not be done in a form that you have to actually do that, but it will be done in consultation to say, yes, we're at this level and we think we can move to this particular level. And so that's the approach of the implementation. There's also another issue that came that the regulation will increase production costs and consumer prices. So NESREA recognizes that transition may involve adjustment costs. Yes, we're not actually saying that will not happen. However, the long-term cost of inaction is far higher. You see, pollution is actually a subtle thing. We know that all that we're trying to stop is that this pollution of plastics pollutes the soil, it pollutes the water, it pollutes our drainages, and even our marine. We now have fish now eating plastics, consuming plastics. And guess what? Where do these fish would end up to? On our tables, right? And then it becomes a national health challenge because we now have people with microplastics in their bodies and all manners of sort of diseases now begin to emanate. And so when you look at the cost, the burden of that on our health, it becomes far more than what we're trying to actually go against. The regulation operates on the fact that there is, it's a polluter pays principle kind of. The person that places that particular plastic or that product on the market is the person that is actually the polluter. And so that person must bear the kind of responsibility of actually seeing how at least it's going to be taken care of. And that's the principle that operates within this particular regulation. So, on the concern that the regulation may encourage import dependence, the regulation is actually designed to do the opposite. One of the most important provisions is the requirement that recycled PET, I've mentioned this, used for compliance should be sourced locally and duly certified to be food grade. So we're not going to start importing recycled PET from elsewhere. It has to be sourced locally. So whatever we use is now the feedstock that the recycling community will now collect and recycle into the kind of PET that will now be infused into the virgin if we're now making new stock now. So it's not going to do that. Now, on the argument that plastic pollution is mainly a waste management problem, not a production issue, I think we need to really consider, and I've mentioned this earlier, this particular issue is a complicated problem. The value chain of plastic is that it starts from the production. Well, even from the design. Somebody has to design it and say, this is how this plastic is going to actually look like. Then it goes to production. And then after production, there will be distribution. After distribution, there will be consumption. After consumption, then disposal. Now you see, what I've just listed is actually categorized into three particular parts: the upstream, the mainstream, and the downstream. Any solution that we have to actually do in reducing plastics must have to actually touch every one of those particular streams. For instance, if, for instance, we have a solution that touches on the upstream is production, so which means that the manufacturer in mind now is designing with an eco-friendly kind of design in his mind. Then we know that the kind of legacy we'll have later on at disposal will be well taken care of because he made due diligence to make sure that he came out with a design that will probably degrade easily or a design that will be collected easily. So it has to start with the design and then the production as well. That has to actually go in. Now, what about consumption? Because that's the mid stage. And at that time, it has to be that, yes, there are kind of systems to be able to recover. And that's why this particular regulation is big on EPR. EPR is extended producer responsibility, which requires that the producer's role does not just end after he has sold whatever content he's selling in the packaging, but it extends beyond that so that he is able to collect or put a compliance tool. For us as regulators, we're able to know whether the whole plastic regulation is actually living up to its objective of reducing the load of plastic. And so we're hoping that within that time, we'll be able to operationalize that central data collection platform. Then we'll strengthen also producer responsibility organizations. Also, another organization under the EPR, the Extended Producer Responsibility. It simply means this, that the producers just gathered around and they said, we're busy making money. But we need to actually create a separate body out of us who is like we'll call it our producer responsibility organization. So anytime we place products in the market, we give the amount for the collection and management of that product to the PRO, which is the producer responsibility organization, to help us manage the waste that that is coming from our products. And so we'll hope that within that time, we'll also try to strengthen the PRO for within all the value chain. Then there will be a phase compliance planning for recycled PET content. I told you about how we're going to start by 2028 by 25%, and then we'll go up to 50% as we come to this thing. Let me make a very good note here. You see, Nigeria, we're looking at our own economy and our own culture, and that's why we took this phase approach. Our brothers and sisters in another climes, Kenya, Rwanda, went for outright ban. They don't want to see it. They don't want to see polythene bags. But we said no. We are looking at our country and we're looking at businesses as well. And we went for phase kind of approach to see how people and to be able to encourage phase approach, encourage circularity, encourage eco design and EPR, so that we will have something that has a life cycle approach. It's not really just that we just wanted to have an outright ban. So, development of producer reporting templates and compliance dashboard. So everybody is accountable. The producers are accountable. It's not that you just produce anything and just pass it to the market. And then collaboration with states, local governments on collection and recovery infrastructure, and periodic implementation review to address genuine technical and economic concerns. This roadmap, this pathway that we have, is actually the way we think that this thing is going to work. Looking at everybody, and if you look at it, one thing that runs through is a kind of a consultative approach. We want to dialogue and sit down and face this problem. And the regulation is creating the basis for that kind of interaction. Because it's on the regulation we're going to interact and say, okay, you're supposed to do this. When do we start doing this? We can start doing this now. I think we're ready to move up to 30% now. I think we're ready to move up to this. And this will be something that we'll sit down together. The DG has already approved that there will be a date. I can't mention the date, but very shortly, probably in the month of July, that we will have an unveiling of this regulation. And we will not just have an unveiling, but we will also have a consultative forum. We'll have a stakeholder forum. And we encourage NAN and all other people who were all reflected within our regional and national um, um, consultative forums before the regulation. We encourage them to still come and bring up those issues. I've had interactions with several people and they have brought out very valid concerns. And those concerns are sometimes fear, right? Born out of fear, but it's good for us to sit down across the table and look at each other and say, okay, this is how we're all going to go, because we're all stakeholders in this business. So let me thank you all. Thank you. It was days. That is actually not very correct. Before this regulation, there have been a lot of things. There have been a policy that was actually developed. There have been several studies by NPAP and other organizations, EU, other people that actually helped us in doing this particular study. So it was based on data that we actually came on and waited for this thing to have a policy to actually, that's like a driving direction of where we wanted to go before we actually gazetted this regulation. So the justification that it's just not based on empirical data is not true. Then there's an argument that said that the NPAP roadmap should first be implemented before the regulations. How do you implement a roadmap? It's through regulations. And even in that roadmap, there are regulations. Down the line, it's actually the regulations that will actually implement the roadmap, right? Because you have actually certain parts of it, but there are key areas that the regulation will handle to actually say this is what is supposed to be done and that is what is supposed to be done. And if this is not done, this actually is the penalty for that. So the regulation is actually key. And then there is also finally the request to actually that we should suspend the regulation or withdraw the regulation. Let me say, NESREA does not consider suspension necessary for national interest. I've just told you why we need this regulation. We're not just out to actually try to stifle business or try to make people's lives difficult. No, we are looking at national interest. We're looking at the point that this particular way of behavior of that we are using plastics in an unsustainable manner will lead us into problems. And so what are we trying to do? We're looking at the national interest, our health completely. So since the regulation has been gazetted as a subsidiary regulation, it addressed this urgent problem and we must actually give it the room to actually function. The regulation is actually set to be actually implemented in a phased approach. That it is not going to be that, okay, because NESREA has gazetted this regulation and then all things take into effect. No, it's not. We're going to actually work with the manufacturers, work with MAN, work with every stakeholder to now be able to know what issues that need to be highlighted, what issues that need to be actually um, done. But you see, the regulation is big on actually making sure that producers are accountable. It's not okay for you to just produce anything and just dump it and you don't care about this thing. And that's the whole idea of the extended producer responsibility. That when you produce a particular product, this product comes into the environment, you should at least worry about what kind of impact that particular product is causing on the environment. And so set up measures to be able to either collect or to be able to recycle or to be able to make sure that these products, when they come to the end of life, are withdrawn from the environment and probably turned back uh, the into new things too. So a way of actually encouraging the recycling of this business. So um, so NESREA proposes an implementation pathway. A, we think that when we have this kind of uh, pathway, there will be a kind of a smooth implementation. And so, one, the clarification of scope of the regulation 26 and other product control provisions, which actually address the issue of the 80 microns I started talking about. So, uh, B, we will develop practical implementation guidelines for manufacturers and importers. And hopefully, this is actually supposed to kickstart a period of consultation. And NESREA is looking at actually having a major consultative forum, which the regulation will be unveiled, and then we'll sit down with everybody who has a stakeholder. And I implore everybody that has any concern about this regulation to come around and so that we will do this regulation. The problem we've always had, because this regulation actually went through its processes of being gazetted, which means that it starts with various kinds of consultations. There were regional consultations, there were national consultations that were held in this particular regard. Now, now that the regulation has passed, and people are now beginning to see certain issues that they think it's going to affect their businesses. These are areas that we can still consult over. These are areas that we can open discussions over, to look at those areas and to see how, because I believe that when we sit down across the table and we look at our national interest of saying we want to see how this pollution is not a problem. And I'm sure everybody, even the manufacturers, agree that we must have a solution that will make us not to have these polluting scenarios. And so, if we sit down across the table, we're able to consult and know what to do to be able to see practical guidelines that will help us to do that. So operationalizing of the central data collection platform for national product material